Hello and welcome to One Man, One Mic. This is episode 2. I do apologize for how long it took to get this episode out. I had some congestion going on, a little bit of sickness that took an annoyingly long time to get over, about 9 days. And I didn't want to record in that time because I didn't sound like myself whatsoever. So, bear with me on that one. But it's actually good that I missed a lot of time because gave us a lot of things to talk about. We have 2 weeks of playoff storylines to go through, wildcard and this past divisional round, which took place on Sunday. And there's a lot of topics that we can really delve into when it comes to these games and these particularly quarterbacks that I really want to talk about. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is some quarterbacks that are really questionable for what's going to happen going into next season. And these are particularly quarterbacks that are, let's say, on the older side. And there's 3 in particular I'm talking about here. We have Philip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, and Drew Brees. Now, 2 of those guys have had some reports coming out of where they're going next year or what they're doing next year, namely Roethlisberger and Brees, with Brees coming out and essentially saying that he was retiring after this game, but nobody ever knows when it actually is their time, so it's just a matter of whether or not we believe he's done. But I'm about to give my opinion on what I think these guys should do and lay out some stats on why I think all 3 of them should be done after this season. So we'll start with Philip Rivers. As far as this season goes, I think he got a lot of flack that wasn't really deserved because, to be honest, this season he put up some respectable numbers. He had 24 touchdowns, 11 picks, and a 97 passer rating on a Colts team that, when you look at the offensive side, doesn't really have a lot of weapons. I mean, they have an aging T.Y. Hilton who really wasn't himself this year. You can tell that he's not the same receiver he used to be. And then he made use out of Trey Burton and Jack Doyle at the tight end position. But aside from that, they don't have a go-to number 1 receiver. They don't have a guy that he can really lay it out to. So a 97 passer rating at his age with that team was respectable. Now, they also have arguably the best offensive line in the league, so you feel like anybody could get behind that line and probably do relatively well. But honestly, Rivers, as far as 2020 particularly goes, wasn't bad. However, going into the future, I think the Colts should still move on from Rivers. And why is that? Because I think the Colts have a Super Bowl caliber team. Their defense is, without a doubt, top 5 defense. Their offensive line, as I just mentioned, is arguably one of the best, if not the best, in the league. And they have a coaching staff with Frank Reich, namely, and coordinator's name is slipping me now, but namely with Frank Reich, that I believe has the tools to get them to the Super Bowl. All they're missing is that key piece, which is a quarterback. Now, we've seen a lot of teams in the past, and even recent history, that have been in a situation where you know they're only one piece away, and that piece is the quarterback. I'm really looking at Minnesota here. Because you look at 2017, Minnesota went all the way to the NFC Championship and was favored against the Eagles to win, and they showed up and laid an egg with Case Keenum. And everybody said all they have to do is fill that position and get a quarterback, and this Vikings team will be a force to be reckoned with. Well, they signed Kirk Cousins to the first fully guaranteed contract in NFL history, and here they are 4 years later, and they still haven't accomplished anything. 3 years later, I'm sorry. But, so, I believe the Colts are in the same situation, but they just have to find the right guy for that spot. Now, who the right guy is, there's been a lot of things that have come out. People have plugged Wentz in that spot. People have plugged, Deshaun Watson in that spot. A lot of names have been thrown out there, but we're not going to talk about who's going to go there. I know that Rivers, however, should not be there. And let me tell you the main reason why, and that would be the fact that Rivers is not a playoff quarterback. He can get you there, but he's not going to do anything once you get there. aside from the game back in, I want to say it was 2007, when he played with a torn ACL, which is a very admirable game and very respectable. But aside from that, you don't think of Phillip Rivers in the playoffs together. You just don't. For example, the last time Phillip Rivers won a playoff game was 2018, which was, the year that they were supposed to be a force to be reckoned with. They were supposed to beat the Patriots, who eventually went on and won the Super Bowl that year. They were that team. That was the year they beat Baltimore. And that was really just because Lamar Jackson laid an egg, which we'll talk more about him later too. Excuse me. But his last playoff win was 2018. And the playoff win prior to that, you have to go all the way back to 2008. So there was an entire decade span, and you Chargers fans know this very well, an entire decade span where Phillip Rivers did not win a playoff game. And to be honest, that's not something you want out of your quarterback. Sure, you can retain Phillip Rivers. I'm sure he'll put up respectable numbers next year too. But when it comes to the playoffs, are the Colts going to be a team that anybody fears? And I think the answer is no if you have Phillip Rivers as your quarterback. Now, once again, I don't know who they're going to bring in to replace him. The next guy might be more fearful. The guy might be even worse. But I think numbers don't lie. And when it comes to Phillip Rivers, he's the quarterback that he's the only guy in the 04 draft class that doesn't have a ring. And there's a reason for it. Because once he gets there, he just doesn't perform. He doesn't know how to win playoff games. And I think it's just time for him to hang it up. And, there were reports about him becoming a high school coach and whether or not he's coming back next year. And the city of Indianapolis is embracing him. But honestly, even you look at the playoff game against the Bills, he had a decent game. He had a 93 passer rating. But at the end of the day, he still didn't do enough to win for them. And you could blame other factors into that, but it was a close game against the Bills, but that Colts team just couldn't close it out. And that's the story of Phillip Rivers' career. He can get you close, he can get you in competition, but he's not going to close it out at the end of the day. And so, it's been a great career. Phillip Rivers, you're probably going to be a Hall of Famer just because of the numbers, but eventually everybody's going to be a Hall of Famer because of those numbers, because it's almost the norm now. But it's just time to hang it up, 17. I'm sure San Diego fans and Los Angeles fans are thankful for what you did for all those years, and I'm sure Indianapolis is thankful for the run you took them on last year. But it's time for the city to move on, and I think it's time for you to move on as well. And I'll be very, very intrigued to see who it is that slides into that spot and what Frank Reich and that offense can do with them. But we'll move on to the second quarterback in this bunch now. And that's going to be Big Ben Roethlisberger. Now, Roethlisberger is a guy that people live on this myth that he is greater than he actually is. And, Steelers fans will probably give me shit for that. But the fact of the matter is, Roethlisberger had a really hot start to his career. And everything since then has been incredibly mediocre. And let me give you a prime example. Ben Roethlisberger started 8-2 in the playoffs. That was his first 10 playoff games. He went 8-2. And they won 2 Super Bowls. That Super Bowl was played in February of 2009. Super Bowl 43. So February 2009, he won the Super Bowl. He was 8-2. It's been 12 seasons since then, guys. Or 13 seasons if you include 2009. So 13 seasons since then, guys. And he's 5-7 in the playoffs. So, once again, hot start to his career, incredibly mediocre since then. He's also, to be honest, been incredibly mediocre in the playoffs. He's been carried by very good Steelers defenses, in my opinion, and he's rode the coattails of them to 2 Lombardi trophies. He had a 4 interception game against Cleveland, 5 turnover game, 4 interception game, 4 interception game against Cleveland, and you would think that was out of the ordinary, but no, it wasn't. It was in fact his 3rd playoff game in which he's thrown at least 3 interceptions, and his 14th playoff game in which he has had either the same amount or even more interceptions than touchdowns. 14th. This is a guy that's played 20, I want to say this is 23 playoff games now. So do the math, folks. That's a pretty staggering percentage in which he's throwing the ball to the other team in big games. But yet, because he delivered 2 Lombardis early in his career, he's going to live on, and he's rode those coattails all the way into now age 38, and people are still talking about him coming back next year. And to be honest, if you're a Steelers fan, I couldn't fathom why you want Big Ben back. Because it's not like he makes your team substantially better. He's not putting up MVP caliber numbers. He's not changing the game if he's in the game or not. I mean, hell, they almost made a playoff run in 2019 when he was out all year, and that was with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges. Pittsburgh would be better off at this point, in my opinion, getting rid of Ben, letting him walk, and finding somebody else to come in and basically just manage that offense. They have enough weapons. They're the best team at drafting wide receivers by far. There's enough weapons on that team where you can bring somebody else in, and I guarantee you they could still win 10 games and lead Pittsburgh to where they need to be. Because everybody wants to talk about Drew Brees breaking down at the end of the season because of his age. Did you not see Ben Roethlisberger at the end of this year? Yeah, they started 11-0. Do you wonder why they finished the year 1-5 if you include the playoff loss? Well, Big Ben didn't look a hell of a lot good at the last 6 games. He's also old. He's also breaking down at the end of the year. And this has been something that's recurred as well. Remember when they missed the playoffs a couple years ago by 1 game? Yeah, Big Ben didn't play very well at the end of that year either. And, I know, like I said, I know he lives on in the hearts of Steelers fans. And, greatly so. You did win 2 Super Bowls behind him at the beginning of the year. But it's just like the same thing with head coaches. How long do Super Bowls give you? How long of a leash do you have after you win some rings or win, 1 ring? And I think the leash has to be over with Ben now. Who do you bring in to replace him? I don't know. I mean, hell, Jameis Winston just threw a 56-yard touchdown pass, so his market's probably shooting up if you ask ESPN. But, I don't know who you bring in to replace him in Mike Tomlin's offense, but it has to be somebody else. And to be honest, there are people saying Mike Tomlin needs to go, and that's another thing that I'm just not sure about it, because it's the same thing. It's how long is Mike Tomlin's leash? He led you to a Super Bowl all the way back in 2008 in his 3rd season, and here we are, 13 years later, and Pittsburgh's been to what? I think one Super Bowl since then and 1 other AFC Championship game. And that AFC Championship game, I think, was, off the top of my head, I think it was like 2015. So, I mean, it's been a hot minute since the Steelers have been really close to touching the Super Bowl. I mean, hell, even this year when they were 11-0, there was nobody taking them seriously as a Super Bowl favorite. And that's not a good look. If you're an 11-0 team, everybody in the league needs to know you are the shit, and that is the team we need to watch out for. But with Tomlin at coach and Roethlisberger at quarterback, I don't think any team looks at them right now and says, yeah, they're going to be a fucking problem. And whether it's drafting a guy, wherever they pick in the draft, which I think is right around 25 or 6, if I'm doing the math right. But wherever they pick in the draft, if it's them drafting somebody this year, which is a pretty deep class, or if it's them, signing a free agent and letting him take over for a year or 2, I think Roethlisberger needs to go, and they need to bring somebody else in. And I'm sure Roethlisberger's expensive. I think I read something that he's the most expensive cap hit next year. But, I mean, do you really want to keep the guy around for another year just because of a money situation? I mean, yeah, he's probably going to take you to the playoffs again, but is it worth being one and done in the playoffs again? Same thing as Phillip Rivers, basically. It's same situation. These are two guys that will get you there, but they're not going to get you very far after that. They'll get you into the club, but you ain't going to dance once you get in. And it's the same thing with Roethlisberger as it is with Rivers. Great career, no doubt a Hall of Famer, but in my opinion, it's time to move on, and it might be time to move on from Tomlin too. And I know it's hard to move on from a head coach that will get you to the playoffs every year. Why do you think the Bengals kept Marvin Lewis as long as they did? But it's something where you have to realize, are you comfortable with being, I don't want to say mediocre, are you comfortable with being good but not great? If you know what I mean. As an Eagles fan, I dealt with this for 15 years with Andy Reid. It was like, okay, we're good. Most of these years we're the best, if not the second best, if not the best NFC team. But we just can't get over the hump. And Andy Reid is, once again, a no doubt Hall of Famer. I mean, he's won a ring with the Chiefs now. Looks like he has a chance to get it to another one now. But in Philadelphia, we knew that it was time. We knew that we got too comfortable being good but not great. Despite the fact that he only won 4 games in his last season, I don't think that would have mattered. He could have won 11 games in that last season. I think he still would have been gone. Because the city and the owner knew we have went as far as we can. We've driven this car as far as we can. But, this Toyota is about to die. And I think that's where the Steelers are. I think the Steelers have some really big evaluating to do in this offseason. And I would be surprised if both Tomlin and Roethlisberger came back. I shouldn't say I'd be surprised, but I would be disappointed if they both did, because I think the Steelers organization deserves better. And with the Browns looking like they actually might be a team and not just a trapper keeper of sadness anymore, and the Ravens looking like they're still going to be a playoff team, and Cincinnati, who knows how they're going to look next year with the second-year Joe Burrow. I mean, the second-year come-up in the NFL quarterbacks right now is a real thing. I mean, second-year quarterbacks are really having a huge glow-up. You could potentially have that entire division be competitive next year. I mean, hell, even Joe Burrow kept them competitive in a lot of games they shouldn't have been this year. So, I mean, with that whole division potentially being competitive next year, it's going to be tough if you're the Steelers and you become that team that gets left out of the playoffs. And I don't know if that's what it's going to take for them to make the move away from away from Roethlisberger and Tomlin. But, hey, maybe that's what needs to happen. I know people love their guys, and they want to see their guys play forever, and they don't want to see them go. But I think it's time. I think they've overstayed their welcome at this point. And if you're the Steelers, just move on. If you're gonna keep Tom, then at least get rid of Roethlisberger. Let somebody else come in. Let some fresh blood come in and lead you to the playoffs, and see what they can do when they get there. All the respect to Roethlisberger. Whether he retires or not, that's up to him. I think if Pittsburgh lets him go, there's no other choice. You can't play for somebody else. But I think it's time for Pittsburgh to move on. I don't think he should be wearing the black and yellow next year. And then our third one would be Drew Brees. Now, yes, there's a 98.7% chance that Drew Brees is gone after this game that happened Sunday night. But he's honestly one that his time is up. I don't think there's any denying that. You can see that the decline in play is very obvious over the last 2 years. And you can see that his health is very obvious, very obviously deteriorating in the last 2 years. He hasn't even thrown for 3,000 yards since 2018, which this is a guy that threw 12 straight seasons of 4,000 yards. So he's missed significant time for 2 years straight. He's significantly worsened at the end of these years going down the stretch just because of his age and his arm strength and the natural wear and tear that your body takes as a professional athlete, especially in the NFL. And I think there's no way that you could say Drew Brees is coming back next year, or any way that he should, I should say. But to be honest, out of all these guys, all three of these dudes, he's the one that would have the most reason, the strongest pull, in my opinion, for the Saints to bring him back. And that's because Drew Brees is actually a very good playoff quarterback, despite what people might think. This is a guy that in 18 games in the playoffs in his career, he's 9-9, which 500. I mean, hell, if you really want to argue it, Peyton Manning was 500 in his career as well, 14-14. But he's 9-9, and he has a 96.8 passer rating in the playoffs. That is phenomenal. In case you forgot, I know I talked about it in my last video that 100 passer rating is basically the norm nowadays, but a 96 passer rating over an 18 game span is very impressive, especially when that's the playoffs, which is the toughest atmosphere. It's the most nerve-wracking games, the ones that matter the most, and it's very clear that Drew Brees is performing in those games. And if you want to pull out the measuring stick here, he has a 96.8 passer rating in his career for playoffs. Tom Brady has a 90.1 in his career of the playoffs. So Drew Brees is actually more efficient as a quarterback in the playoffs than Brady is. If you really want to take the argument there, is he a better playoff quarterback? Well, obviously not. Brady's the greatest playoff quarterback. There's no doubt about it. But to say that Brees is not a good playoff quarterback, for people that say that Brees chokes in the playoffs, well, aside from this game that he just had in Tampa, which, by the way, was by far the worst playoff game he's ever had. It's the only one he's ever had that's under a 75 passer rating, 38.1, which, I think that's more to the reason of people to say that he's done. And I think he proved to everybody he's done. And, you really hate to see a legend of the game go out like that, but it was bound to happen. You can only pull on the thread so much before it rips, and I think that's where he was at. And a lot of people had hopes for New Orleans going into that game, and honestly, for about 3 quarters, it looked like New Orleans was going to win that game. But all the turnovers that happened there at the end of that game, and it looked like Brees was just throwing it up and hoping and praying for a handful of plays there, and eventually you're going to get bit when that happens. There were a few plays where he threw it, and you just had to close your eyes and go, why? Even as somebody that's not a Saints fan, it hurt me to see him go out that way. But, this is a guy that clearly, I think a lot of people could say without a doubt, might be the greatest regular season quarterback of all time. Not in terms of winning percentage. I'll give that to Peyton still. But, as far as just the stats go, I mean, there's no denying it. 12 straight 4,000-yard seasons. He's all-time leading passer in yardage until Brady plays next year and probably passes him. But all-time leader in yardage, all-time leader in touchdowns up until this year. Once again, I think Brady passed him by 7 or 8. And, without a doubt, he's a baller when it comes to the stats. But that's also the biggest knock people have on him. They say that the stats are all there, but he's only got 1 ring. And that's something that I think is we as a society of sports fans, it is so absolutely ridiculous that having 1 ring in any sport is not good enough. It's constantly being measured up against somebody else or somebody else's accomplishments or accolades, that if you only have 1 ring, then you did not have a successful career, or you're not nearly as successful as insert player here of the same position. Just like Dan Marino, without a doubt, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, easily the greatest by the time he retired, in my opinion at least. But Marino, greatest quarterback of all time statistically, but he couldn't get the ring. Now, at the same time, Drew Brees got the ring, but he's not good in a lot of people's eyes. He wasn't a great quarterback because he only got 1. Just like people say Aaron Rodgers only has 1 ring. Only. You know how many great quarterbacks in history have 0 rings? How many guys put up Hall of Fame numbers and have 0 rings? And you're telling me that the guy that has 1 isn't good enough? The guy that has 1 Super Bowl MVP, it wasn't good enough? And I think it's just the fact that we are in a sports society now where you see these dynasties, whether it's player dynasties like LeBron James, or whether it's team dynasties like the Lakers, like the Patriots, like hockey. You had the Blackhawks there for a minute. You have the Penguins. You see all these dynasties, whether it's player or team dynasties, and people get used to it being the norm that, hey, this player in his career is going to win this many championships, and that instantly means that he's better than this player because he only has one or he only has two. Even Peyton Manning winning 2 Super Bowls, people still hold him up to other quarterbacks and say, oh, he only has 2. Is that not your goal? Is that not, when you enter any professional sport, is it not your goal to win a championship? Yes, obviously once you win one, the goal is to win more. But at the end of the day, if you go through high school, if you go through college, you get all the way to professional sports, which the percentage of people that do that is so astronomically low. If you get to be a professional athlete and you get the chance to even play in a Super Bowl or play in a NBA Finals, and you happen to actually be fortunate enough to win it, that should be good enough. Like for me, there are guys that have 2 Super Bowl rings that I consider greater than guys that have 5, or guys that have 0 Super Bowl rings that I consider greater than guys that have 5. Guys, for example, Reggie White is 10 times the player that Charles Haley ever was. But, for some people, you look at Charles Haley's rings, and that matters more. If you are those people, you are wrong, because Reggie White is the greatest defensive end of all time. But that just shows how, what's the word? So how much of like a Neanderthal mentality it is when it comes to these sports arguments, and how people like to discredit people because they only have a certain amount of championships. There's nowhere in Drew Brees' career that you can't check a box. Oh, he threw for the most passing yards? Check a box. Threw for the most touchdowns? Check a box. Threw for the most this? Check a box. The highest career completion percentage? Check the box. Hey, did he win a Super Bowl? Yep, check the box. Did he win 2? No. Well, he's obviously not as good as these 10 players. Is he... Okay, put it right here. Drew Brees, much better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger ever was. Having that argument right here with Ben Roethlisberger talking about him. Drew Brees, much better quarterback than Roethlisberger ever was. Roethlisberger got 2 rings, but if you put their stats side by side in every category, regular season and playoffs, Brees wipes the floor with him. Now, people don't want to hear that because Roethlisberger has 2 rings, but the fact of the matter is, Brees is a more impressive quarterback, and in my opinion, he always will be. And considering Drew Brees played until he's 42, and Roethlisberger's, considering his injury history, he probably won't even make it to 39, it's, that's just another thing you can add on the list and say, hey, 1 point for Brees. And, ultimately, the point of this was that Drew Brees doesn't get enough credit, and I think this fabrication that he's a bad playoff quarterback is really not justified. The 9-9 record, sure, could he have won a couple more games? Were there a few games here and there that maybe if he completed a couple more passes might have went a different way? Yes, but that you can say that for anybody. If there are a few plays that go different, Tom Brady's fucking 9-0 in Super Bowls right now. At the same time, if there's a few plays that go different, Tom Brady's 0-9 in Super Bowls right now. And, that's just the truth. And there's nothing that Brady can do about that. It's just like there's nothing that Brees can do about that. It's all, it's all wasted talk at this point. And, I challenge the people to go look up Drew Brees' complete playoff stats. I didn't care to write them down. But, as I said, I know that he has a 96.8 passer rating, 36 touchdowns. I want to say it was 14 interceptions, so almost a 3-to-1 passer or touchdown interception ratio in the playoffs. I mean, this is a guy that really, really did what he had to do when it got to those games. And, that's all you can ask for. There are a lot of quarterbacks that have played in a lot more playoff games than he did and performed half as well as he did. But those players are praised more than he is because they got 2 rings or got 3 rings. John Elway's held to a standard of one of the top 5 quarterbacks of all time on numerous players' list, but nobody wants to talk about all the Super Bowls that he lost. It only matters that he won 2. So people are going to put Elway ahead of Brees in a lot of categories because he got 2. What, did Brees ever lose a Super Bowl? No. That's the same argument people used for Joe Montana for years against Brady. Did Montana ever lose a Super Bowl? No. Well, obviously he's better than Brady. People still to this day use that argument and say that he's a better quarterback than Brady because he never lost a Super Bowl. Yeah, but he also didn't get to 5 more. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword here, guys. But yeah, I think the time has come for Brees. Could he come back next year and play? I'm sure he could, but it's something that nobody wants to see that at this point. You know, I think we've seen him at his best at a couple times this year, but those couple times are getting smaller and fewer and far between as the years go on. And, you know, what is New Orleans going to do after him? I don't know. I don't think Taysom Hill's the answer. I think that he's maybe one of the most overrated players in the NFL. I mean, this gadget player where you come in and you do this and that, and we're going to use you as a glorified Wildcat player. It was cool when he first started it, but now it seems like they suffer more when he's in than they do benefit. It seems like there's, more odd and end plays that don't work out rather than the ones that you see on the highlight reels from ESPN. And even Taysom Hill this year, when he took over as starting quarterback, it really wasn't a great performances that came out of him. I mean, he won against a couple bad teams and lost against an Eagles defense that was actually really good. So, it just kind of goes to show that the only halfway decent defense he came up against, exposed him. He wasn't able to run the ball the way he wanted to. The Eagles made him throw, and when he threw, they made him pay. They didn't let him carve him up like Atlanta did, or like Denver did, which Denver let him carve him up on the ground. But I don't think that Hill's the answer there. Is Winston the answer? Sean Payton's a good quarterback coach, so maybe he can turn Winston into the quarterback that a lot of people want him to be. And, hell, we've seen one pass really out of him since he got to New Orleans, except for, I think, a few where he finished out one game. I don't remember which game it was. But, aside from that, we've seen one pass out of the playoffs, and, it was a good pass. So, and it went to his team, which is improvement from last year. So, thumbs up for that. But, what they're going to do in the future, I don't know. And then those are three team situations with Rivers, Roethlisberger, and Brees that, all three of those teams are going to be interesting ones to watch in the offseason, I think. If I had to take an honest guess, I think Pittsburgh will stick with Roethlisberger, even though I don't think they should, just because of the money situation and cap situation, because it's such a mystery and a question mark on what's going to be going on with that come this offseason. But the other two, Indianapolis and New Orleans, I think they're both going to be in the market for a quarterback in the offseason. It's going to be real intriguing to see who ends up in those locations. Sorry. But, so let's move on. So we're going to look at a couple other playoff games real quick. Not going to really go too much into the wild card games because that's a week-old news now. But I will say, what the hell is wrong with Russell Wilson? I think that's a question that a lot of people are asking out of that Seattle game. I'm not going to touch into it too much. But, quick stat for you. Russell Wilson started his career 6-1 in the playoffs. His first playoff loss was in the Super Bowl against New England. And since that time, he is 3-6 in the Super Bowl, or 3-6 in the playoffs, I'm sorry. So, instantly, you look at that, and it's looking like a bad situation. And I've seen the memes online about, before and after Sierra, which, makes me laugh. But more or less, I think it's before and after the LOB. Ever since the Legion of Boom disbanded and Dan Quinn left and got a head coaching job, that Seattle team has not been the same. Same thing, I think their running game is another issue. They went from having a great running game with Marshawn Lynch to now it seems like it's very inconsistent. And that's nothing against Chris Carson. I think he's actually a very solid running back, but he's not always available, and they don't really have a consistent running game. And a lot of that goes to the offensive line as well, which has been a problem throughout Wilson's career, is that it seems like he's always running for his life. And, when it comes down to it, is there another team that I can put in the same category as whatever team Rivers is on, whatever team Roethlisberger is on? They're going to get you to the playoffs, but can you trust them? And my answer, honestly, is just no. I've picked Seattle to make the Super Bowl 3 years in a row now, and I've been disappointed 3 years in a row. They were my preseason pick this year. Well, if there was a preseason, but they were my preseason pick this year. It was them in Kansas City, and even going into the playoffs, they had such a strong resume going in. They were 5-1 in their last 6 games of the regular season. They outscored their opponents by, I want to say, 83 points. Excuse me. But when it came down to it, the Rams just stomped all over them. They ran the ball for record amounts, and Russell Wilson came out and was flat. 72 passer rating, only 174 passing yards, a 47% completion percentage I think he had. And, it just goes to show what's wrong with Russell Wilson. This is a guy that I said myself when he first came into the league and he was going on those playoff runs and they made back-to-back Super Bowl appearances. I said, this could be the next dynasty. This could be the next Tom Brady, because the way he started off so hot in his career, and, his first playoff loss was the, absolute mindfuck that was that Super Bowl in that call by Pete Carroll. That was the first one, and, you take that away. He could have been 7-0 to start his playoff career with 2 Super Bowl rings. But I've heard people say that there's a curse because of that play and all this other shit happened. I don't believe in the curse thing, but there's definitely something that has changed, and I think it's just the fact that they went all in on a defense and a defense coordinator and had such great runs, and now they still have a offense that's good enough to carry them to the playoffs, but once they get there, they don't have the defense that can keep them in those games, in the defense that can take over games like they did. So, I'm not going to go too much into that after that, but Russell Wilson, he has some problems. Seattle's not going to do anything with him, so I'm not going to talk about him as far as getting replaced, but they definitely have to find something to help that team, because once they get there, they can't seem to make it past the finish line. And so I will now jump into our divisional games. So, first one we're going to talk about here is the Saints-Bucks. I'm going to kind of go in reverse here. We're going to talk about the Saints-Bucks. So, as I said, Drew Brees did not play well. 38.1 passer rating, 3 picks. Obviously he went out with a very bad bang. Not the type of bang you want. The type of bang that gets you killed, like a gunshot bang. Not the type that gets you, child support. But Brees didn't play good. And honestly, the first half of the game, neither quarterback played good. It was a very ugly first half. I think it was 13-13 at the half. 1 touchdown apiece, and neither touchdown was really anything impressive. And, I say ugly just because that's what the masses think it was. Me, as a defensive-minded football fan, I love those type of games. And I would have loved it if neither quarterback broke 150 passing yards and, it came out to, 16-14 final score or some shit like that. But for the sake of argument that most people are going to say, it was an ugly game. And Brees, obviously, one side of the spectrum, very bad. However, the other guy, he's been around the block a few times, Mr. Brady. He, once again, came out and performed very well, 92.9 passer rating, and he now has a 98.6 passer rating for the playoffs this year in 2 games. Put that into perspective. 98.6 is the 5th highest passer rating in a single playoff of his career right now. The other 4 he had over 100. It's the highest since 2017. So for anybody to say that it's his defense carrying him and he's not doing anything, this dude is still out here balling. And it's kind of ridiculous and unfair, and he needs to be tested for PEDs. But 98.6, he's still doing what he's still doing what he does. He still got it. And yes, Tampa's defense is the reason that they won the New Orleans game. No, it wasn't Brady. How mediocre he played in the first half, just like Drew did. That first half, you couldn't say that Brady won them that game, because that you just didn't watch the game in that case. Sure, you could say he didn't lose them that game, but he certainly didn't win it for him. But at the same time, he's still playing great. I mean, he had 390 passing yards against Washington, I think, and I don't remember the total he had against New Orleans, but it was 2-something. But either way, I mean, he's still doing what he does. He's still winning playoff games, and that's the reason Tampa brought him in, And they're a game away from the Super Bowl now, and, well, what do you think Brady does when he gets to that situation? Chances are Tampa's going to be going to Tampa. They might be the first team to ever host a Super Bowl and play in it at the same time. Now, I'll talk more about that game here in a little bit. But, yeah, so not much to say about that game, except for the fact that Brees played bad, Brady played good, Brees is gone, Brady's never going to retire. We're going to be dealing with this for another 20 years. Let's move on to the next game. So the next one is going to be the Rams and Packers. So first thing I'll say is Aaron Rodgers is the MVP, and he continues to prove why. Another 296 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had a rushing touchdown. Doesn't turn the ball over again because, that's just something he doesn't know how to do. And, the Packers it's a game where Green Bay just dominated the ball. This is a game that I don't even think the Rams played bad in necessarily. It was just each team got 8 possessions, and the Rams didn't take advantage of their possessions, especially early in the game. The Rams scored on 3 out of 8 possessions. The Packers scored on 6 out of 8. They had a 9th one, but it was the last one of the game where they basically just ran the ball out. But, because honestly, Goff had an 105.9 passer rating. I think it was the highest of his playoff career, because he's been very mediocre in the playoffs, very legendarily. But Goff played, as good as he probably could, and it was just the fact that that Rams team, especially that defense without Donald really in the game, they just couldn't stop the Packers, especially Aaron Jones in that running game. And it was just a matter of, taking advantage of the possessions, which that's how you win playoff football. It's defense and, making the plays on offense, taking advantage, complimentary football. And the Packers played complimentary football. When their defense made a stop, they scored. I mean, they went 4-4 in the first half, I think, scored on all 4 possessions. And then they scored on the opening possession in the second half. The Packers just did what they had to do. Every possession they had, they went out and got points. They didn't take a punt for an answer until the second half. And the Rams just didn't come out with that same fire. They didn't come out with that same attitude. Which is a shame, because the Rams were a very underrated team this year, and I think that honestly, if they would have found a way to beat Green Bay, they would be a very, very good matchup for Tampa. But, as I said, when it came down to the playoffs, one team came to play and the other one didn't, and we're gonna see just how Green Bay handles that situation going into the Tampa game. But if they come out and play the same way, and they are playing that same complimentary football, then Tampa could be in for a similar game, just like Los Angeles was. Because, Tampa came out and played really slow against that Saints defense, and if Tampa comes out and plays slow against the Packers, and the Packers take advantage just like they did against the Rams, we could really be in for a bloody game in that one as well. But once again, I'll talk about that one later. So we're about to dive into the Ravens and Bills now. So first thing, let's address the elephant in the room. Lamar Jackson struggles in the playoffs again. 196 total yards, no touchdowns, a pick and a fumble. And then obviously you got a concussion, which, may or may not have been a good thing for Baltimore. But, Jackson, he has his defenders. The city of Baltimore loves him. There's no denying that. All I saw on social media after the game was that he did everything he could and that you can't blame him, and, it's not his fault. It's the offensive line's fault, everything else. So, he's definitely got his positive critics that will stand up for him until the end of time. But going back to the stats don't lie, like I said earlier, he has very, very, very bad numbers when it comes to the playoffs. This is a guy who, for his career, has a 102.6 passer rating in the regular season. For his career, he has a 61.5 passer rating in the playoffs. 61.5. In 4 playoff games, he has 5 picks and 5 fumbles. That's 10 times he has put the ball in harm's way in 4 games. He's just a completely different quarterback when it comes to crunch time, when it comes to being under the lights. When the lights come on, the stars come out, and he's showing that he's not a star when it comes to the playoffs. And I don't know why. I can never put myself in that situation. I'll never be in that situation. I'm not a professional athlete. This dude could outrun me. He could outfight me. He could everything. But the point of the matter is, I'm here to talk about what he does, and there's no denying that what he does in the playoffs is not show up. You could talk about how explosive he is. You can talk about how he's a game changer, but all these things only happen in the regular season. Even this year, he didn't throw a touchdown pass in the first game either. Their first playoff game against Tennessee, he had no touchdowns and a pick. So this year in the playoffs, he threw a total of 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Which, hey, sure, the guy had 230 rushing yards, but he's a quarterback, not a running back. So you don't want that out of your quarterback. Sure, some people might want that, but at the end of the day, when it comes to the playoffs, when it comes to crunch time, when you're trying to make it to the Super Bowl, you want your quarterback to take over the game and win it for you. And Lamar Jackson's not the type to do that. And he's proven it time and time and time again now. Baltimore fans have seen this for 3 years in a row. It's sad that the guy you brought in to replace Joe Flacco is worse than Joe Flacco in the playoffs. Joe Flacco, historically mediocre regular season quarterback, but when it came to the playoffs, Flacco found a way to turn that shit on. Lamar Jackson's the exact opposite. Incredible talent in the regular season, incredibly mediocre in the playoffs. Maybe they should sign Joe Flacco again and, do a tag team deal, like I spoke about in my other video with the Eagles. Let Lamar Jackson play the regular season, and then tag in Flacco for the playoffs, and let the Ravens go to the Super Bowl that way. Think about it, Harbaugh, think about it. But yeah, Jackson struggling again, and this is going to be no doubt something that comes up when it comes to contract negotiations, because everybody's been talking about how he's the next one in line, the next Mahomes, the next Watson, the next quarterback to get a huge deal. And if I'm Baltimore, and if I'm ownership and Harbaugh and management there, I'm going to find it really hard to want to pay this guy a $150 million contract when he has nothing to show for when it comes to the playoffs. Because the goal, as I stated earlier, your goal is to win Super Bowls, to get 2 championships. This is a guy that has proven that he can't do it. He can't get your team there. Get your team to the playoffs, get you into the dance, but he ain't going to dance when he gets there. Ain't going to dance when he gets there. He'll sit by the little punch bowl, he'll drink, he'll lean against the wall in the club and, look awkward, but he ain't going to be on the dance floor. And that's not the guy you want in this situation. It just ain't. On the other hand, the Bills were incredibly average in this game, which is even worse for Lamar Jackson, because this was the most beatable Bills team you're going to see all season long. It was 17 points. Not Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen had an 81 passer rating, I think it was. He completed almost half of his passes. And, the Bills struggled to move the ball. The Ravens defense really kept them in containment. They only ran the ball, I think, 16 times, 16 rush attempts, 37 pass attempts, I think he had. They were a team that very much struggled on offense and very much struggled to get that, the flow going. And the Ravens couldn't capitalize. 2 missed field goals. They couldn't score a touchdown. Jackson couldn't move the ball. It was just, this is a Bills team that came into this. The last 7 games coming into this game, they had outscored their opponents by 121 points, which is the highest margin of the highest point differential of any playoff team in the last 7 games. 121. The next closest was not even close. I think it was Tampa Bay. They might have been 98 or something like that. But yeah, 121 points. They are blowing the doors off of everybody that came into this game. And yeah, sure, they squeaked by Indianapolis, but coming into this Bills team didn't have a lot of confidence as far as, hey, we can really beat the shit out of Baltimore. And they ended up leaving with all the confidence in the world, even though they had a bad day. Out of the other 7 playoff teams that were playing this weekend, or the other 6, hell, probably 5 of them could have beat Buffalo in that game, but the one that couldn't was Baltimore. They couldn't capitalize. They couldn't take advantage. They did the exact opposite of what Green Bay did. They didn't play complimentary football. All the opportunities that Buffalo gave them to go down and score and capitalize, they messed it up. Justin Tucker hits both uprights. They can't score field goals. Then Lamar Jackson, he's got interceptions. He fumbles the ball. It was just ugly football. That was actually ugly football, not just good defensive football. That was ugly football. It was hard as a non-Ravens fan. It was hard to watch that Ravens offense and that Ravens team and go, what is happening? Why does this keep happening? What is going wrong with this offense that every year they get to the playoffs and they are a shell of what they put out in the regular season? But, hey, it happens time and time again. And like I said, they'll get you to the dance, but they ain't going to dance when they get there. And then the last playoff game to talk about, which I'll only go into briefly because it really wasn't much of a, not really much to talk about when it comes to it, is Kansas City and Cleveland. And, this game was, it was in Kansas City's hands. They were up 19-3 at one point, and everybody was looking at Cleveland saying, this is the same old Browns, and, Baker can't do it when it comes to these big games, and, Cleveland's all hype, and Kansas City's going to wipe the floor with them, and walk into the next fucking round, AFC Championship game, no problem. And then something big happens. And it's the one thing everybody's talking about now. Patrick Mahomes, the $500 million man, goes down with a concussion on a hit that, to be honest, didn't even look like a concussion-worthy hit in my opinion. I hadn't watched most of the first half, and when I actually did turn the TV on and really started paying attention to the game, it was actually at the play in which he got hurt. And, it didn't look like a play to me where he was concussion-worthy, because there was no helmet-to-helmet contact. he didn't have like that neck whiplash where he hit the turf or anything. So it really surprised me when he got diagnosed with one. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I don't know enough, and maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. And that was a life-threatening hit, and I'm an idiot. But at least in my opinion, it didn't look like it was anything that I would really be concerned about as a spectator. But he goes down, and as soon as that happened, it seemed like the entire momentum of the game changed, because it was at that point it was a 9-point game, and eventually Kansas City finished that drive out and kicked a field goal. And then Cleveland started coming, and they went down the field and scored and made it a one-possession game. And then Kansas City just found Chad Henne did okay, but his first couple drives they ended up, going nowhere. And he had the really, really ugly throw into the end zone, which basically just a touchback punt, where he just threw it up, and Demarcus Robinson was in the area, but it was not nearly close to him, and the safety was just standing there waiting on the ball. And like I said, it was basically like a punt. He was basically fair catching that thing in the end zone, and Cleveland had the opportunity. It was in their hands. All they had to do was go down the field and win, and they couldn't do it. And then Chad Henne comes down at the end of the game, and Cleveland's got no timeouts, and he makes a better run than Lamar Jackson did all weekend, and runs for 13 yards and almost a first down. And the very next play, they go for it on fourth down and end the whole game. And that's Andy Reid's play calling for you. And that's the risk and the reward of being an aggressive play caller, because if he calls that play and they miss and they don't convert that fourth down, and Cleveland goes down and wins that game, Andy Reid's an idiot, and everybody's roasting him, and he shouldn't be allowed to call plays, and this is exactly why Andy Reid was fired from Philly, and you hear all the headlines. But because it worked out, he's a genius. And going into next week, it's going to be very interesting to see what Kansas City can do if Patrick Mahomes is not available. I'm just going to transition right into the next game here, looking ahead to Kansas City and Buffalo. So this is a game, in my opinion, completely depends on which Josh Allen shows up for Buffalo, and Kansas City, in my opinion, it completely depends on which quarterback plays. If Patrick Mahomes is cleared, then I think we have ourselves a 6-point win by Kansas City, probably. I don't think Kansas City's going to blow them out by any stretch of the imagination, just because Kansas City has been the worst team this season at covering in any game. So Kansas City's not going to find a way to beat them by 2 or 3 touchdowns. It's just not going to happen. So I'd say it's going to be like a 6-point game, like a 30-24 type of deal. But that's if Mahomes is in. If Mahomes is not in, then I'm going to give it to Buffalo by 3. And that's just mainly because I think Josh Allen's going to have a good game regardless, because he hasn't shown that the pressure of the game is getting to him. 2 playoff games so far, and even though he played mediocre this past week, he still overall in the playoffs has played great. I mean, hasn't turned the ball over. He's just looked really, really good. And I mean, it might be the AFC Championship game, and this might be what Buffalo fans have been waiting for since 1994. But I think Allen's going to play good, and if he doesn't, it's going to be ugly. But I do think that no matter what, Buffalo is going to be close. It's just going to be a matter of whether you're on the right side or the wrong side of the coin when it comes to this, and that coin is completely two-sided for Kansas City. One side of that coin is Patrick Mahomes, and the other side is Chad Henne. If it lands on Chad Henne, then Buffalo's going to the Super Bowl, and that's that. And that's not a knock against Chad Henne, because honestly, if Chad Henne starts, I think Kansas City still puts up a really good game, and that's just because Andy Reid has proven over the years that it doesn't matter who's at quarterback. He can find a way to, develop an offensive scheme and play calling scheme to where his quarterback's going to be successful. Every quarterback that's ever played in an Andy Reid system has been successful. Hell, the Eagles were ready to move on from Donovan McNabb and hand the reins of the franchise to Kevin Kolb because Andy Reid made Kevin Kolb look good. So, this is a situation where I think Chad Henne will be okay if he starts, but I don't think he has what it takes to win against Buffalo. So, Buffalo fans, to me, that's the key to everything. If Mahomes plays, I'm sorry, but I think they're going back-to-back, at least 2 back-to-back Super Bowls. If Mahomes doesn't play, then I think you guys have every right to win that game. And if Buffalo finds a way to lose against Chad Henne, then I think we're going to be talking about a very different Josh Allen and a very different Buffalo team next week. Because that would be a situation where they don't take advantage. They would basically be Baltimore against Buffalo last week. Like if Patrick Mahomes isn't playing, you have the ball's in your court. You should be the favorites at that point. So, if everything depends on that injury report, and I know Buffalo's going to be watching with fingers crossed that Patrick Mahomes isn't playing. And, it'll be very interesting to see where it goes. And then we'll go into the NFC Championship game. So, Green Bay and Tampa. In my opinion, this will be by far the better of the 2 games. Even if Patrick Mahomes plays, I think this is going to be the better of the 2 games. And let's give a little bit of backstory real quick. Aaron Rodgers has played Tom Brady head-to-head 4 times in his career. Rodgers is 1-3 in those games. However, only 1 of those 4 games has taken place in Lambeau Field. The other 3 have been either in Raymond James or at Gillette. So, in the one that he did play in Lambeau, he did lose, but it was only a 5-point loss. So, we don't really have a good sample size to know with the conditions the way they are, and with it supposed to be snowy, we don't really know what kind of Rodgers we're going to get. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that regardless of the history, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to come out and play lights out. I also think that Tom Brady is going to come out and play lights out. I think the key to this game and the key to which team goes to the Super Bowl is going to be the defenses. Whichever defense can show up and make the plays, whether it's just one big play or whether it's a shutdown performance like they both put out this year, no matter what it is, whichever defense can show up and make the defining play or the plays is going to be the one that goes to the Super Bowl. Whether that's, one interception that happens late in the game and just steals all the momentum and closes the game out, or whether that's just a big, 3rd down stop at the first quarter that ends up reverberating through the game and ends up being what changed everything. But, regardless, I think we're going to have 2 quarterbacks to throw for over 300. I think this is going to be a shootout on the offensive side. But it's just going to be a matter of which defense shows up and how they impact the game, basically. Now, I could be wrong. We could see a Green Bay team that comes out and gets the pressure on Brady and makes it very hard for him to throw. And, it could be a blowout for Green Bay. We could also see Tampa come out and explode like they did against Drew Brees. And, or like they did against Green Bay earlier this year. We could see Tampa's defense come out and make it very hard for Aaron Rodgers to throw and make it very hard for them to run the ball, which they were the number 1 rush defense this year. So, that could be another big factor in this. But, it's going to be very interesting to see, which team's defense steps up to the challenge. I would be very, very intrigued if this game ends up being decided by anything but a big defensive play. Whether that's a pick, a fumble, a sack, even a special teams play like a blocked punch or something, that type of play is going to be what wins the game, in my opinion. Now, I don't think, while I do think that it's going to be, 200-300 yard days by the quarterbacks, I don't see this game being like some 90-point total game. I would say it's going to float around 28-24. I don't know what the over-under is on the game, but I would say 52 points is about what we're looking at. So if the over-under is under that, then I would take the over. But, I would say 28-24 is right around where this is going to stay. And I'm going to give the nod to Green Bay, but honestly, it could be either one. As I said, that turnover, I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to be one turnover that decides this game. Whether that's a Brady fumble, a Brady pick, or a Rodgers fumble, a Rodgers pick, or even a running back fumbling it, or receiver fumbling it, or something. Whatever team gets that turnover, it's preferably late, but whatever team gets that turnover is going to win. Because I don't think this is going to be a game where we're going to see more than maybe 2 turnovers. So whichever team gets that big turnover is going to be the one that wins. And it'll be the team that, in my opinion, finishes with 28 to 31 points, right there in that range. And, I think it'll be Green Bay just because of how efficient Rodgers has played this year. And I think he's got just this vendetta out for the league this year, and he's out to prove everybody that, he's still the shit and that you can draft as many people you want behind him, but they're going to stay behind him. And, Brady obviously has a resume like no other when it comes to the playoffs, but it's just going to be, I just think it's going to be tough to beat Green Bay, especially in Green Bay. And, you could say that the cold weather and the snow is going to help Brady more than Rodgers, but I think it's going to be a very level playing field when it comes to that category. And I just think that this Packers defense and this Packers offense and this Packers team altogether is just better, well-rounded than Tampa Bay is. But, hey, it's the greatest quarterback of all time when it comes to the playoffs. So, he could eliminate all that and the Bucs could win by 28. So, it'll be interesting to see just how that one comes out. But, yeah, if I had to say, my official pick would be Green Bay by 4. And as I said, everything depends on Mahomes when it comes to Kansas City. So, by the time this video gets uploaded, I don't think his health will be announced by then. So I'll just say it now. If Mahomes plays, they win by 6. If he doesn't, they lose by 3. And, we'll see if I'm right about that. But I think that's just about it when it comes to the playoffs, and I'll be very, very intrigued to see how the Super Bowl rounds out. I think Green Bay, Kansas City will give us the best Super Bowl. However, I think Tampa, Kansas City will be the best storyline. But there's this little bit inside of me that's rooting for Buffalo to come out and make the run and make the Super Bowl because, losing 4 Super Bowls in a row is just heart-wrenching to think about, and I don't know how Buffalo fans lived through it. Watching the Eagles lose 4 NFC Championship games in a 7-year span was hard enough. And then the one Super Bowl we did make, we lost as well. So I know what it feels like to be, a Super Bowl contender year in and year out and not come out with a ring. And so I think Buffalo fans have suffered a lot more than most fans, and I think that they very well deserve it. But I just think that right now, if Mahomes is playing, they are easily the 4th best team in the playoffs remaining. And, hey, sometimes that underdog mentality is what you need. That's what the Eagles had in 2017. They had the underdog mentality. Nobody gave them a chance against anybody in the playoffs, and they turned around and proved everybody wrong. So, maybe Buffalo can ride the same horse and, make it to the Super Bowl and prove everybody wrong. But, like I said, everything rides on number 15. If he plays, I don't think it's happening. But if he doesn't, Buffalo, this is going to be your best shot. Nobody else is going to give you the same odds that you would have without Mahomes. So, you gotta take advantage if he's not going to play, guys. But I think that's about it, guys. I'll be uploading another video later this week that's more of a 1 or 2 topic thing. And I plan on every Monday I'm going to start doing these uploads that are reviewing the NFL. And as the NFL offseason goes, I'm going to be posting some more stuff about the draft and free agency and things along that line. But, when it comes down to everything else, it's going to be... I'm going to try to start doing 2 videos a week. And once again, I'm still working on the mic. I'm still working on, sound quality and getting comfortable with all this bullshit. So, as always, comment below, guys. Tell me if I'm doing anything wrong, if I could fix anything, if you have recommendations for, equipment or any shit like that, go ahead. Or like I said before, if you just want to tell me that the Eagles suck, you just want to tell me that Michigan sucks, you just want to tell me that bowling's not a sport, whatever you got to say, go ahead. I'm all ears. I am open to constructive criticism. But regardless, I'm very serious about this. I put a lot of time and effort and money into this project, and I plan on this being something that I really go after and try to make eventually a career out of. And it's always been my dream to be in some sort of sports media. I used to watch SportsCenter until 4 in the morning when I was a kid, and I want to be that kind of guy. So, I appreciate anybody that watches this. I appreciate anybody that tells your friends, subscribe, like it, all that good shit. And, I'll definitely be seeing you guys on the next one. So, as I said, if you got anything bad to say, tell me. If you got anything good to say, tell me. Either way, like, subscribe, tell your friends, and I'll see you on the next one, guys. Thanks.